A pleasant afternoon to each and everyone. Today we were going to report another story of English 101 survey of Afro-American literature. And for our literature, we are now in a Japanese literature, specifically a second story of it. But before anything else, let me first introduce ourselves or the reporters for today. My partner is Joshua Bayaron, and yours truly, Joyce Barroa. So, this story is entitled In a Grove, written by Ryunosuke Akutagawa. But before anything else, or before we proceed to the summary of this story, first let's us um, get to know the characters of this story for you to familiarize all of them later on. First, a woodcutter, the one who found the body in a grove, described that the body was lying flat on his back. And then a Buddhist priest saw the victim and his wife from the road of Sekiyama to Yamashina. And then a policeman, the one who arrested the primary suspect, Tajumaro. And then an old woman, the mother of Takeharo's wife, Masago, giving information about who Takehiro was. So these four characters are also known as sub-characters. Later on, they will just give their testimonies about the death of Takehiro. And then these three are the main characters. First, the Tajumaro, a well-known criminal who is suspected as Takehiro's murderer, has admitted to kill Takehiro. And then Masago, 19-year-old beautiful wife of Takehiro, was raped by Tajumaro, has admitted to kill Takehiro. A dead man found in a grove has admitted to kill himself, Kawasago no Takehiro. And then another additional characters, the magistrate, but in some version it is translated as the police commissioner. So the magistrate is a figure of police and judicial authority in Kyoto. He is never directly quoted or described in the story, but his questioning is inferred through the answers that characters deliver in their testimony. And then the spiritual medium, Takeharo's spirit, gives his account of events through a nameless, undescribed spirit. And then for the author information, again, the writer is named Ryunosuke Akutagawa. So Ryunosuke Akutagawa, his art name Chokodo Shujin, was a Japanese writer active in Taisho period in Japan. Prolific Japanese writer known especially for his stories based on events in the Japanese past for his stylistic virtuosity. He is regarded as the father of Japanese short story and Japanese premier literary award. The Akutagawa Prize is named after him. He committed suicide at the age of 35 through an overdose of barbital. So that's it for the information for our writer. So before anything else, I just want to have a little bit of disclaimer. And this story will have some mentioning about rape, murder, and suicide. So you have been warned. So right now, let us now proceed to the summary of the story. Set in pre-modern Japan, Ryunosuke Akutagawa's short story, In a Grove, is a collection of testimonies and confessions that concern the death of a 26-year-old samurai named Kanazawa no Takehiro. So to make it simple, it tells a story about a death of man named Takehiro. So it also has seven different accounts or confession. Okay, so the first section of the story comprises four testimonies given to first the magistrate, a Kyoto City official who is investigating the mysterious death. And then the second testimony nga naghatag is the woodcutter who found the body. That morning speaks first, confirming the location of the deserted bamboo grove where he found the corpse and describing the dry chest wound in detail. And then next, confessor is a traveling Buddhist priest says he saw a man, a woman, and a horse the day before, just afternoon. And next is the policeman testifies that he has caught a bandit named Tajumaro, who is infamous for raping women around Kyoto. The policeman suggests Tajumaro is responsible and that the magistrate should question him. And then the fourth testimony is delivered by a young woman's mother who confirms that her daughter Masago and Masago's husband Takehiro, the dead samurai, would have been traveling in the hills the day before. She breaks down crying, worried for her missing daughter's safety. So here starts the narrative switches to Tajumaro's voice as he casually confesses to having killed Takehiro. He details how Masago's beauty led him to execute a plan, first leading Takehiro into a bamboo grove under the pretense that he would sell him treasure stolen from aristocrats' burial mound. Tajumaro then tied Takehiro up and raped Masago. To his surprise, she asked him to kill either himself or her husband, saying she would have be with the one who lived. Tajumaro untied Takehiro and challenged him to a sword fight that ended in Tajumaro stabbing Takehiro in the chest on his 23rd thrust. Meanwhile, Masago escaped, so Tajumaro fled the forest with Takehiro's weapons and rode Masago's horse until he was back off and subsequently caught. Tajumaro is resigned to his fate and asks that he be executed by hanging at a tree outside the prison. So for me to summarize it, first we are in the POV or point of view of Tajumaro. He confessed that he saw the couple, Takehiro and Masago. Tajumaro, smitten by Masago's beauty or the wife of Takehiro, he planned to get Masago from Takehiro. So for him to execute the plan, he lured Takehiro or deceived Takehiro, saying that there are treasures inside the bamboo grove. And then after that, Takehiro, being the greedy man also himself, he believed Tajumaro's lies. And after that, he later on realized that there is no treasure inside the bamboo grove. But it was too late because Tajumaro tied him up. And then after that, he raped Masago. And then Masago, after she was raped by Tajumaro, he asked him to either kill himself or her husband. But Tajumaro challenged Takehiro in a duel, and eventually Tajumaro killed Takehiro in his 23rd thrust of his sword. So after that, Tajumaro also confesses that Masago escaped from him. So he has no choice but to also escape from the scene. So that's it for the narrative or point of view of Tajumaro. So now we are going to proceed to the account of Masago herself, delivered as confession in the Kiyomizu temple. In her version of events, Masago details the contempt that she saw in Takehiro's eyes after Tajumaro raped her. She went to her husband's side, but Tajumaro kicked her to the ground and she lost consciousness. When she awoke, the bandit was gone. She concluded that she and her husband needed to die now that her honor had been disgraced. She found the dagger she had used to try to fend off Tajumaro, and with his permission, plunged the dagger into her husband's chest. She tried to stab herself in the neck and throw herself into a pond, but ultimately failed to commit suicide. After her rape and her failed to attempt to commit joint suicide, Masago asks the religious authority to whom she speaks what she should do. So now we are in the point of view of Masago. So for me to summarize it or for you to understand, here the simple explanation. So again, after in Tajumaro's POV, so we change in Masago's POV. So after Tajumaro raped her, he saw the hate from the eyes of her husband Takehiro. So she went to his side, but Takehiro kicked her. She lost consciousness, and when she awoke, Tajumaro was gone. So she just suggested that her and her husband need to die with her. She stabbed Takehiro. So, and then after that, she tried to kill herself but failed to do so. So basically, the confession of Masago is kind of different from Tajumaro because Tajumaro admitted that he is the one who killed Takehiro. But in confession of Masago, she was the one who stabbed her husband. And that's the contradiction to the both of them. So to make it more complex, so let's proceed to the POV or confession of Takehiro. So the final testimony is delivered by Takehiro's spirit, or as what we call later, earlier, I mean, is the medium spirit, as told through the medium, as it said. Takehiro's version contradicts Masago's and Tajumaro's accounts by claiming that Masago asked the bandit to kill her husband. Unit um, Unit died in their shock at Masago's betrayal. The men discussed whether Tajumaro should kill her. This show of respect makes Takehiro forgive Tajumaro for his crimes. While Takehiro hesitated to answer the bandit, Masago escaped into the grove. Tajumaro untied the rope, binding Takehiro to the cedar tree and fled with Takehiro's weapons. Exhausted, Takehiro took Masago's dagger and stabbed himself. He slowly bled as he watched the sun set over the grove. In the dark, an unidentified character walked up to him and withdrew the knife. The story ends with Takehiro saying he then sunk into the darkness between lives, with no unifying narrative presence to clarify the contradictory events presented in the testimonies. The reader is left without a clear idea of how Takehiro died, only possibilities. So now, I'm sure you are really confused with the events of this story. Um, so the final testimony is the Takehiro's spirit. So you might wonder how he could confess or give his statement if he is already dead. But as it was said, it was delivered by his spirit or the medium itself. So to make it short, Masago asked Tajumaro to kill Takehiro. This is the confession of Takehiro. Tajumaro planned to kill Masago, and then Masago escaped. Tajumaro freed Takehiro. Tajumaro escaped, and then Takehiro killed himself. So right now it is more complicated to understand because the testimony of Takehiro's spirit is different from Masago and Tajumaro. And this contradiction is that um, Takehiro, according to Takehiro, he killed himself, not Ajumaro nor Masago. So it was kinda um, a cliffhanger because the reader is left without a clear idea of how Takehiro died. So only possibilities. So that's how the story ends. There is no fixed or solid confirmation who is really the killer or the murderer of Takehiro. So it is for you to ponder on about it because that's I think the goal of the author for us to think the possibilities of what might had happened to the events of this story or specifically who is really the one who killed the Quejero. So thank you for listening. So I had already delivered the summary of this story. I hope you understand it. So Joshua will explain the moral lesson of this story and also the themes.
The moral lesson of the story is that people will alter the truth to make them look better. It teaches us to analyze the facts and not just make assumptions. Here are the themes presented in the story. First is subjectivity, contradiction, honor, and death and rebirth. Subjectivity, the theme of subjectivity is most notably expressed through the story's unconventional structure. In place of an objective third person authorial presence, Akutagawa chooses to convey the events of In a Groove through individual testimonies and confessions, each of which are inherently limited by subjective perspectives. Next is honor. Though Akutagawa does not explicitly mention honor in a grove, the three major characters convey through their decisions and attitudes that there are particular codes of honor they abide by. And lastly, death and rebirth. The cycle of death and rebirth is a theme first touched on when the priest compares Takehiro's life to a drop of dew in a flash of lightning, natural phenomena that existed only for an instant but are guaranteed to re-emerge again in another form.